Every 40 seconds, a child vanishes in America. But for one little boy, the last safe place wasn't a home or a police station. It was the silent fiction aisle of a public library after dark. And the woman who found him broke every rule to keep him safe, unaware his father was the most feared man in the city. Catherine was just finishing the closing checklist at the Franklin Public Library when she saw the small pair of sneakers sticking out from under the history table. The boy, no older than 6, was clutching a torn photograph, shivering with silent terror. By staying with him, she violated the library's most ironclad rule. And by sunrise, her act of compassion would put her directly in the crosshairs of a man who ruled the city with absolute, violent power. She knelt slowly, the worn knees of her trousers brushing the polished floor. "Hey there," she whispered, her voice the gentle one reserved for scared patrons and lost dogs. The boy flinched, curling tighter around the torn corner of a photograph. Catherine Morgan's life was a testament to quiet order. Every book had a place. Every policy, from the late fee structure to the unattended children protocol, existed for a reason. At 28, she knew the Franklin Public Library's bylaws better than her own family tree. And Rule 7.3 was unequivocal. Under no circumstances shall staff provide childcare or remain on premises with an unattended minor after operating hours. The procedure was to call security, then the police. Full stop. But the boy wasn't just unattended. He was hiding. For 3 hours she tried. She called the non-emergency line, describing a child, maybe 6, dark curly hair, green jacket. The dispatcher was polite but clear. Without a name or a guardian, he was just another entry in a city log. An officer would come by when one was available. She made hot chocolate from the staff kitchen, using the powdered mix she kept for her own stressful days. He wouldn't take it. She offered a blanket from the lost and found. He shook his head, his eyes wide, fixed on the library's main doors as if expecting monsters to burst through. That's when she saw the photo clutched in his small, white-knuckled hand. It was torn raggedly, as if snatched away in a struggle. One half showed a woman's smiling face, kind eyes, dark hair. The other half, the part the boy had, showed a man's hand resting on a child's shoulder. On the wrist was a distinctive tattoo, a serpent coiled around a dagger. The library's wall clock ticked past 10 p.m. The patrol car never came. Catherine faced a decision with no good outcome. Follow the rules, leave him for a system overwhelmed by nearly 800,000 missing child reports a year, where family abductions are the second most common type and cases average 326 days unresolved. Or break them. She thought of the library's own trauma-informed training, a new initiative she championed. Libraries aren't just book repositories, they are havens. For the homeless, for the lost, for people fleeing violence. Was this not the ultimate test of that principle? With a sigh that carried the weight of her career, she sat cross-legged on the floor, her back against the history shelves. "Okay," she said softly. "You don't have to talk, but you shouldn't be alone. How about a story?" Started with picture books, pulling them from the nearby bins. He didn't respond. She moved to chapter books, the ones she loved as a child. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. She read about a little girl finding a whole world inside a closet, a place to hide from the bombs falling on London. At the word hide, the boy's eyes flicked toward her. It was the first spark of connection. She kept reading, her voice a steady, rhythmic anchor in the silent vault of books. The clock moved past midnight. The boy's shivering subsided. His grip on the photo loosened just a fraction. Sometime around 2 in the morning, exhausted by fear, he finally slept. Catherine carefully slid a pillow from a reading nook under his head and draped her cardigan over him. She studied the torn photo again. The tattoo was high-end, intricate, not street gang. Something else. A cold dread, separate from her anxiety about her job, began to pool in her stomach. Dawn was a gray smear through the high windows when the sound reached her. Not the gentle hum of the city waking, but a low, synchronized rumble. Tires on wet pavement. Many of them. She crept to a window overlooking the rear parking lot, her breath catching. 5 identical black SUVs with darkened windows had formed a precise, menacing circle around the library's delivery entrance. Doors opened simultaneously. Men in dark suits emerged, their postures rigid, their heads scanning the area with military efficiency. They weren't police. Their coordination was too seamless, their silence too complete. This was a tactical operation. The boy stirred in his sleep, murmuring a single word: Papa. The main library doors were solid oak, locked with a heavy deadbolt. From the front atrium, Catherine heard the handle rattle once, twice. Then a voice, deep and frayed with an emotion that sounded like rage or maybe terror, cut through the quiet. Luca, Luca, say qui. The boy's name was Luca. The lock mechanism gave way with a sickening crunch of splintering wood. The doors burst inward. Framed in the doorway stood a man in his early 40s. His olive skin was pale with lack of sleep, his dark hair disheveled. A costly suit jacket hung open over a wrinkled shirt. His eyes, dark and intense, swept the empty library before landing on Catherine, who stood frozen between the stacks and the sleeping child. In that instant, she didn't see a monster. She saw a father whose face was a map of frantic relief and terrifying power. He took a step forward, his gaze locking on the boy under her cardigan. Every instinct told her to run. But Rule 7.3 was shattered. All that was left was the child she'd protected all night, and the man who now claimed him. He didn't shout. The silence was worse. Vincent Romano crossed the space in 5 long strides, his focus solely on the child. He knelt, his large hands hovering over the boy as if afraid to touch a mirage. Luca, he breathed the word raw. The boy's eyes fluttered open. For a second, confusion, then a wave of recognition so profound it crumpled his small face. Papa. He launched himself into his father's arms, burying his face in the man's neck. Vincent held him, eyes squeezed shut, his body shuddering with a relief so violent it looked like pain. Over Luca's shoulder, his dark eyes opened and found Catherine. The relief vanished, replaced by a chilling, assessing calm. Who are you? Catherine Morgan, I work here. Her voice was steadier than she felt. He was here when I locked up last night. I couldn't leave him. One of the suited men appeared at Vincent's side, hand inside his jacket. Boss, we need to move. This is exposed. Vincent stood, Luca clinging to him like a koala. He didn't take his eyes off Catherine. You called the police. I did. They said they'd send a car. They never came. A flicker of something, understanding, perhaps contempt, crossed his face. Of course they hadn't come. His people would have intercepted the call, rerouted it, buried it in bureaucracy. The system had failed her, leaving her alone with his son. You stayed all night. What was I supposed to do? A spark of defiance cut through her fear. He's 6. He was terrified. The photo, Luca whimpered, pointing a small finger at the floor where the torn image had fallen. La photo, Papa. Vincent's gaze snapped down. He gently pried Luca loose, handing him to the looming bodyguard, then stooped to pick up the torn paper. He stared at it, his face hardening into a mask of such pure, lethal fury that Catherine took an involuntary step back. He recognized the tattoo. Where did he get this? The question was a blade. He had it when I found him. He wouldn't let it go. Vincent turned the fragment over. The back had a smudged ink stamp, Photo Rapid 3rd Ave, a cheap, anonymous print shop. He looked from the photo to his son, who was now quietly crying again, reaching not for his father but back toward Catherine, the librarian who had stayed, the woman who had seen the evidence. Vincent made a decision with the speed of a predator. You come with us. It wasn't a request. 2 men stepped forward, not threateningly, but with an immovable finality. Wait, I can't just. You can, Vincent interrupted, his voice low. You have seen his face, you have seen this. He held up the photo. That makes you a witness to a crime that never happened. You can walk out with my gratitude and my protection, or you can become a problem the city never finds. Choose. The cold pragmatism of it stole her breath. There was no third option, no polite thank you and return to her life. The library was no longer a haven. It was a crime scene she had contaminated. She looked at Luca, his tear-streaked face pleading with her. She thought of the policy manual gathering dust in her office. She nodded. The convoy moved with terrifying efficiency. Catherine was ushered into the middle SUV, seated between two silent men. Vincent and Luca were in the vehicle ahead. They didn't go to a sprawling estate, but to a nondescript brick warehouse in the meatpacking district. Inside, it was a fortress disguised as a corporate office. Soundproofed rooms, monitors showing every angle of the streets outside, a small army of men and women in sharp clothes who moved with quiet purpose. This was the nerve center, not the showpiece. Vincent deposited Luca with a severe-looking woman introduced as Dr. Rossi, who whisked the boy away for a medical check. Then he led Catherine into a sparse, windowless conference room. He poured 2 glasses of water, pushed one toward her, and sat. The frantic father was gone, replaced by the CEO of a crisis. Start from the beginning, every detail. So she did. The empty library, the sneakers under the table, the 3-hour wait, the hot chocolate, the reading. She described Luca's terror, his silence, the way he stared at the doors. Vincent listened, utterly still, his eyes missing nothing. When she finished, he asked a single question. The photo, which half did he have? The right half, the man's hand on his shoulder, the tattoo. Vincent leaned back, steepling his fingers. The tattoo belongs to a man named Marcus Bellini. He has been my consigliere, my right hand, for 15 years. He was also Luca's godfather. He let that hang in the air. The betrayal was personal, familial. The woman in the other half of the photo is my wife, Sophia. She died 2 years ago. A car accident. Now Marcus has my son, or he did. He took him from his school yesterday afternoon. My men have been searching every gutter, every alley, every rival's hideout. We did not think to search a public library. Why? Catherine asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. Power, Vincent said simply. I am modernizing, moving legitimate investments, distancing from old practices. Marcus profits from those old practices. He believed removing my heir, making me unravel with grief, would make me pliable, or remove me entirely. He hid Luca not to harm him, but to break me. The library was a stroke of brutal genius, a place no one like me would ever think to look. A place where a child might simply be overlooked by a system that fails 90 children every single hour. There was a knock. Dr. Rossi entered. Luca is physically fine, dehydrated, tired, but unharmed. However, he is emotionally agitated. He is asking for the library lady. He says she chased the dark away. He will not settle. Vincent's jaw tightened. He looked at Catherine, a new calculation in his eyes. The child's attachment was a variable he hadn't anticipated. It seems you are now part of his safety equation. I need to go home, Catherine said, though it sounded weak even to her. You have no home, Vincent stated, not unkindly. Not as it was. Marcus knows a woman was with Luca. He will find you. He will use you to get to me, or he will remove you to tie up the loose end. You walk out that door, you are a liability to him, and therefore you are dead. He stood. You will stay. You will help my son feel safe. In return, you receive my protection. Full stop. It was the same offer, but the context had shifted. It was no longer just a threat. It was a grim assessment of reality. Before she could protest, Luca burst into the room, dodging the doctor's hand. He ran straight to Catherine, wrapping his arms around her legs. You stayed, he whispered into her cardigan. The simple words shattered her resistance. She looked from the clinging boy to his father, a man who commanded armies of shadows. Her quiet world of Dewey Decimals and late fees was gone. She was in the story now, and the next chapter was being written in blood and secrets. Vincent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus knows we have him, he said, his voice a low rumble. He's calling a meeting of the captains. He's making his move. He looked at Catherine, his message clear. The storm wasn't coming. It was here. The meeting was not a negotiation. It was a declaration of war, and Vincent Romano would attend on his own terms. He dispatched a terse, one-line response to the summons. Midnight, the old warehouse on Pier 12. Come alone. It was a trap, of course, but a transparent one. A test of loyalty and a display of power. Every captain would know the location was a Romano stronghold, rigged with surveillance and surrounded by Vincent's most loyal soldiers. To walk in was to submit. To refuse was to declare yourself Marcus's man. Catherine was given no choice but to stay in the fortified warehouse, with Luca and two stern-faced guards. The boy, exhausted from his ordeal, finally slept in a makeshift bedroom, but he'd made Catherine promise not to leave the adjacent sitting room. She sat, listening to the distant sounds of the city, holding a book she couldn't read. Her mind replayed the cold logic in Vincent's eyes. She was an asset now, valued for her calming effect on Luca and her witness status. She was also a prisoner in a gilded, terrifying cage. At 10 minutes to midnight, Vincent entered the room. He had changed into a fresh, dark suit. The frantic father was completely submerged beneath the persona of the Don. "You will watch," he stated, nodding to a bank of monitors that flickered to life, showing multiple angles of a vast, empty warehouse space, Pier 12. "You will see the man who took my son. You will understand what you are part of." "I don't want to understand this," Catherine said, her voice quiet but firm. "You already do," he countered. "You saw the fear in my boy. That is the product of that world. You can hide from the mechanics, but you cannot hide from the result." He left before she could reply. On the screens, the drama unfolded silently. Men began to arrive, each alone or with a single bodyguard, their figures small and grim in the cavernous space. They gathered in a loose circle under a single hanging light. Marcus Bellini arrived last. He was a handsome man in his 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the relaxed posture of someone who believed he'd already won. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a banker. That was the most frightening part. Vincent entered from the opposite side. The tension was palpable even through the grainy video feed. The captains shuffled, eyes downcast. This was the moment of fracture. Vincent didn't shout. He spoke quietly, his words picked up by sensitive microphones. "Marcus, you called a meeting. I am here. Speak." Marcus smiled, a bland, diplomatic expression. "Vincent, we were worried. Your son goes missing and you disappear. The family needs stability. We need to know you are fit to lead in this difficult time." "My son is safe," Vincent said, his voice cutting through the air. "He was found by a civilian in a public library where you hid him." A ripple went through the captains. Hiding a child in a library was a coward's move, not a soldier's. It showed a disrespect for the boy's personhood, using him as a mere prop. Marcus's smile tightened. "A convenient story from a grieving father. Where is the proof? Where is the boy?" "The proof is his testimony, and the testimony of the woman who found him." Vincent paused, letting that settle. "She saw the photo you gave him, Marcus. The one with your tattooed hand on his shoulder, a keepsake from his godfather, a receipt for betrayal." Marcus's composure cracked for a microsecond. He hadn't anticipated a witness. He recovered quickly. "A homeless woman, a librarian. You would base an accusation on the word of a stranger against your brother." On the monitor, Vincent did something unexpected. He pulled out a phone, tapped it, and held it up. A live video feed filled its screen, a feed of the very room Catherine sat in. She saw herself pale and wide-eyed on the couch, and behind her the open doorway to the bedroom where Luca slept. The camera zoomed in on the boy's peaceful, sleeping face. "She is not a stranger. She is under my protection, and my son sleeps soundly tonight because of her. Ask yourself, captains, who acted as family? The man who hid a child among strangers to break his father, or the stranger who sat on a cold floor all night to shield him?" The pivot was masterful. Vincent had reframed the entire conflict. It wasn't about business or power, it was about the family's soul, who upheld its real values. Catherine, watching, felt a sickening lurch. She was being used as a prop just as Luca had been, her compassion weaponized. But she couldn't look away from the raw truth on the screens. The captains were wavering, their loyalties tilting back toward Vincent. The moral authority he'd borrowed from her was working. Marcus saw it too. His diplomacy vanished. "You've gone soft," he spat, the real venom surfacing. "You let a woman and a child make you weak. This life is not for the weak, Vincent. Your father knew that. Your wife understood that. The mention of Sophia was a tactical error. Vincent's stillness became lethal. Do not speak her name. The command was so quiet it was almost inaudible, yet it froze every man in the room. Marcus, desperate, pressed his advantage. She knew what you were, she accepted it. Or have you forgotten how she died? A tragic accident. So convenient for your conscience as you tried to go straight. The air in Catherine's viewing room turned to ice. On the screen, Vincent's face showed no emotion, but his right hand curled slowly into a fist. The revelation crashed over her. Sophia's death, the accident. Was Marcus implying what she thought he was implying? Vincent took a single step forward. My son is safe. My conscience is clear. Yours, Marcus, is not. You are stripped of your position. You will leave this city by sunrise. If you are seen after that, you will be buried in it. It was a sentence of exile, not death. A mercy. The gathered captains bowed their heads, accepting the verdict. Marcus's face twisted with humiliation and rage. He had lost. He turned and strode from the warehouse, his exit a silent admission of defeat. Back in the safe room, Catherine let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was over. A brutal, bloodless coup. Vincent returned an hour later, the suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, but the cold fury was gone. It is done, he said. Your wife, Catherine whispered. What did he mean? Vincent's eyes closed for a long moment. It is a question I have asked myself for 2 years, an investigation I quietly pursued. The brakes failed. The mechanic who serviced the car the week before vanished. He was on Marcus's payroll. He opened his eyes, and the grief there was bottomless. I had no proof, only suspicion. Today I have his motive. He removed my compass, then tried to remove my air. He wanted me adrift, and then he wanted me gone. The horror of it was staggering. This wasn't just a business dispute. It was the systematic destruction of a man's entire world. Catherine understood now why Luca's safety was an obsession. He was all Vincent had left. For 3 days, a tense peace settled. Catherine was moved from the warehouse to a sleek, modern penthouse high above the city, another Romano property. It was luxurious, secure, and felt like another beautiful cell. Luca thrived with her there, his laughter returning, his nightmares less frequent. He followed her like a shadow, reading with her, drawing pictures. He drew one of a woman with a kind smile and a stack of books, standing between a scowling man and a scary shadow. He labeled it, "Katie Keeps the Dark Away." Vincent watched this bond solidify with a complex mix of gratitude and frustration. His own interactions with Luca were stilted, shadowed by the boy's memory of his disappearance and Vincent's own guilt. Catherine became the interpreter, the bridge. He wants to show you his Lego ship, she'd say, or he's afraid of the thunder, but he won't tell you. The 4th night, Vincent asked her to stay in the living room after Luca was asleep. He poured a whiskey. He listens to you. He's a child who's been traumatized. He needs to feel safe. And I do not make him feel safe. It was a statement, not a question, heavy with resignation. You are a large man in a world that just hurt him, Catherine said carefully. It's not about you. It's about what you represent right now. Power. And power failed him. Vincent studied her. And what do you represent? Quiet stories. A place where the rules make sense. A closed library is predictable. A father who can be stolen from school is not. It was the bravest thing she'd said to him. He didn't get angry. He nodded slowly. You are correcting my failure. I am being a librarian, she said softly. Providing a safe space. It's what we do. The moment was broken by Vincent's head of security, Marco, entering urgently. Boss, a problem. Marcus didn't leave the city. He was spotted an hour ago at a private airfield, but he didn't board. He met with someone. We just identified the tail number of the other jet that landed. It's registered to a shell company, linked to the Calibri family. The Calibri family, Vincent's most vicious rivals from whom he'd wrested control of the docks years ago. A cold dread settled in the room. Exile wasn't enough for Marcus. Humiliation had curdled into a vendetta. He wasn't just leaving, he was switching sides, bringing Romano secrets and internal weaknesses as a welcome gift. Vincent's face hardened. He's selling them the blueprint to our operations and our vulnerabilities. His eyes went to the hallway leading to Luca's room, the greatest vulnerability of all. Marco's phone buzzed. He listened, his face grim. The team at the airfield lost him. He's in the wind, and boss. The wiretaps on the old Calibri lines just picked up a fragment. They mentioned the library angle. They know about her. All eyes turned to Catherine, the library angle. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a target, a symbol of Vincent's perceived weakness and a direct link to his son. Marcus had handed the Calibris a weapon, and it had Catherine Morgan's name on it. Vincent stood, the quiet father vanishing once more. Lock the building down, no one in or out, double the detail on Luca's floor. He looked at Catherine, the calculation back in his eyes, but now tinged with something resembling respect. You wanted to go home. I told you that life was over. Now you see. The darkness you chased away from my son, it wasn't just Marcus. It's an entire world that knows we have a weakness, and they are coming for it. The penthouse didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a glass cage, suspended in the night, waiting for the first stone to be thrown. For 48 hours, a paralyzing quiet held. Luca, sensing the tension, refused to sleep in his own room, instead dragging his blanket to the floor beside Catherine's bed. Vincent spent the hours in a converted study, now a war room, maps and personnel files spread across every surface. The enemy had a face now. Salvatore Calibri, an old-world brute who believed in blood messages and absolute dominion. And he had a guide, Marcus, who knew every safe house, every protocol, every weakness. The attack, when it came, was not a frontal assault. It was a precision strike designed for maximum psychological terror. At 3:17 in the morning, the building's main power failed, plunging the penthouse into darkness lit only by emergency floor lights. A second later, the dedicated generator kicked in, but the landlines and primary internet feed were dead. They were isolated. Marco's voice crackled over the secure radio network. Breach. Ground floor. 6, maybe 8 hostiles. They took out the concierge and the 2 exterior guards. They're in the elevator shaft and the stairwells. They're coming up. Vincent's orders were calm, cold. Seal the stairwell doors on floors 30 through 40. Flood the elevator shaft with foam. They will have to climb the last 10 floors, make them work for it. He turned to Catherine and the guard in the living room. You and Luca to the safe room. Now. The safe room was a panic room disguised as a walk-in closet, with reinforced walls, its own air supply, and a monitor linked to the building's security cameras. Catherine bundled a sleepy, confused Luca inside. As the heavy door began to swing shut, the boy's hand shot out, grabbing her sleeve. You too. You come too. She looked at Vincent. His expression was unreadable. The guard gestured impatiently. The safe room was for the principal, the asset, not for her. Vincent gave a single, sharp nod. Go. She slipped inside just as the door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. On the monitor, she saw the shadowy figures of Vincent's men taking positions in the penthouse foyer, behind sofas, in doorways. The silence was shattered by the first gunshots, muffled, percussive thumps from the service staircase. The firefight had reached their floor. Luca buried his face in her side, shaking. Is Papa shooting the monsters? Catherine held him tight, her eyes glued to the screen. He's keeping them away, she whispered, the lie feeling necessary. This wasn't keeping away, it was a war in a 5,000-square-foot apartment. The camera feeds showed flashes of movement, men falling. 2 of Vincent's men went down in the foyer. Then the penthouse front door exploded inward, not from gunfire, but from a concentrated explosive charge. Smoke filled the camera view. 3 figures rushed in, armed with compact submachine guns. They moved with brutal efficiency, clearing rooms. They weren't there to kidnap. They were there to erase. Vincent was not in the main living area. He had fallen back to a defensible corridor leading to the bedrooms and the safe room. Catherine watched, heart in her throat, as a Calibri gunman rounded a corner and Vincent stepped out of an alcove. The confrontation was silent, brutal, and over in seconds. Vincent disarmed the man with a vicious twist, used the man's own body as a shield against a burst of fire from a second attacker, and returned fire with precise, controlled shots. Two more hostiles fell. This was not the boardroom boss or the grieving father. This was the foundation upon which the empire had been built, and it was terrifying to behold. But they kept coming. Marco's voice came over the radio, strained. "Boss, we're pinned in the kitchen. They've got more coming up the east stairwell. They knew the blind spots." They had a guide. Marcus was directing them in real time. Vincent backed down the hallway toward the safe room door, his gun raised. He was making his last stand right outside their hiding place. Catherine could see his reflection in the polished steel of the door's interior plate. His face was smudged with smoke, but his eyes were clear and furious. Then a new voice cut through the radio static, a voice dripping with faux warmth. "Vincent, you're cornered. Send out the boy and the woman. This doesn't have to end with your whole detail dead." It was Marcus. He was in the building. Vincent keyed his mic. "You're a ghost, Marcus. You just don't know you're dead yet." "Sentimental to the end," Marcus sneered. "I'm offering you a trade. Their lives for yours. Walk out, take your punishment like a man, and I let the librarian and the boy go. They're civilians, after all. My quarrel isn't with them." It was a transparent lie, but it created a hesitation in the remaining defenders, a slim, poisonous hope. Catherine looked at Luca, then at the monitor showing Vincent's resolute back. She knew what Marcus would do the second Vincent surrendered. He would kill them all. The library angle would be permanently closed. An idea born of sheer desperation and her knowledge of this gilded prison formed. She scanned the safe room's control panel. There was a secondary ventilation system, a small duct for air exchange. It led to a maintenance closet in the master bedroom. It was too small for an adult, but maybe. "Luca," she whispered, kneeling before him, "I need you to be the bravest you've ever been. There's a little tunnel, like in your storybook. You remember the mouse in the wall?" He nodded, eyes wide. "I need you to crawl through it. It will lead to your papa's bathroom. You need to tap on the door 3 times like this." She tapped a rhythm on the floor. "Can you do that? Can you be my brave mouse?" "I'm scared." "Me too, but we have to help your papa. He's all alone out there." With a trembling lip, Luca nodded. She helped him squeeze into the narrow duct, giving him a small flashlight. "Go straight until you can't, then kick the grate. I'll be right here." She watched his small feet disappear into the darkness, her own fear a cold rock in her chest. On the monitor, Marcus's voice pressed. "Time's up, Vincent. Your men are bleeding out. Make the noble choice." Vincent took a deep breath, his shoulders squaring. He was going to do it. He was going to step out. Then, faint but unmistakable, came 3 timid taps from the master bedroom door behind him. His head tilted. Confusion, then dawning, horrific understanding. His eyes flicked to the safe room door. Catherine mouthed a single word at the camera, hopping he could see. "Diversion." Vincent's face transformed. The resignation vanished, replaced by a ferocious, calculating clarity. He keyed his mic, his voice now ragged with false despair. "All right, Marcus, you win. I'm coming out. Don't hurt them." He made a show of slinging his weapon on its strap and raising his hands. He took 2 steps into the smoky foyer, visible to the Calibri gunmen who trained their weapons on him. "Where are you, you coward? Come and take it." This was the moment Marcus had waited for. He stepped from the service hallway, a pistol in his hand, a triumphant smile on his face. He didn't see Vincent's subtle nod to Marco, still pinned in the kitchen. He didn't see the small, soot-streaked face peeking from the cracked bedroom door. "Old friend," Marcus said, raising his gun. "You were never my friend," Vincent said, and he dropped. As Vincent dropped, 2 things happened simultaneously. Marco and his remaining man opened fire from the kitchen, not at Marcus, but at the gas line running to the penthouse's fireplace. And from the bedroom, Luca's high, clear voice screamed, "Papa!" Marcus flinched, his head snapping toward the sound of the child. It was a second of distraction. A second was all Vincent needed. He rolled, came up with a backup pistol from his ankle holster and fired twice. Marcus stumbled back, his triumph replaced by shock, looking down at the blossoming red on his chest. The gunfire ignited the leaking gas. A low asterisk whump filled the apartment, followed by a wave of heat and force that blew out the remaining interior windows. The explosion wasn't lethal, but it was chaotic and blinding. In the confusion, Vincent scrambled back, grabbed Luca from the doorway, and shoved him toward the safe room. Catherine slammed the release button. The door hissed open, and she pulled them both inside as bullets pinged against the exterior steel. The blast had disoriented the remaining Calibri attackers. Vincent's reinforcements, who had been fighting their way up the stairs, finally breached the floor. The sounds of battle faded, replaced by shouts of "clear" and moans of the wounded. When they emerged an hour later, the penthouse was a ruined, smoky shell. Paramedics tended to the wounded. Marcus Bellini lay where he fell, his eyes open, staring at the ceiling he'd wanted to rule under. Salvatore Calibri's attack had been repulsed, its leader now deprived of his inside man. The message was sent. The Romano family's weakness was, in fact, its greatest strength. In the weeks that followed, the balance of power in the city shifted irrevocably. With Marcus's betrayal exposed and his alliance with Calibri failed, Vincent moved with swift, brutal legitimacy. Calibri assets were absorbed. The remaining captains, their loyalty tested in fire, were more devoted than ever. The internal purge was complete. For Catherine, there was no returning to the Franklin Public Library. Her apartment had been mysteriously vandalized, her car totaled. The official narrative, fed to the library board and the press, was that she had resigned to take a private tutoring position for a family overseas. A generous severance was deposited into her account. Her old life was neatly, permanently erased. Vincent offered her a new one, not as a prisoner but as a chosen member of the inner circle. In a quiet ceremony at the now-repaired penthouse with only Maria, Luca, and a few trusted captains present, he made it formal. "Catherine Morgan," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "You saved my son's life not once but twice. You stood your ground when you had every reason to run. In my world, that is the only currency that matters. Loyalty, courage." He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was not jewelry but a simple engraved key. "This is for the house in the Berkshires. It has a library, a big one. It is yours to run as you see fit. And this," he placed a hand on Luca's shoulder, "is your responsibility, officially as his legal guardian and tutor. Where he goes, you go. What you say regarding his well-being is law, even over me." It was an immense, terrifying gift. A life of purpose, security, and profound danger. She looked at Luca, who was beaming, clutching a new picture book he wanted her to read. She looked at Vincent, who awaited her answer not as a boss, but as a man trusting her with his heart. She took the key. "The library rules will be stricter," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. Vincent almost smiled back. "I would expect nothing less." The final surprise came a month later. A thick envelope arrived at the Berkshires house, forwarded by Vincent's lawyers. Inside were documents from the Franklin Public Library's insurance company and the city's civil court. A lawsuit, filed quietly on her behalf, against the city for failing to provide adequate police response to her call, leaving a civilian in mortal danger. It had been settled out of court. The sum was substantial, enough to fund a lifetime of work. Attached was a note in Vincent's precise handwriting. "You were failed by the system you believed in. This is not repayment. It is reinvestment. Build a better one. V." Catherine now walks a razor's edge. She is the guardian of a mafia prince, the curator of a sanctuary built with shadow money, and a woman who knows too much. But when Luca has a nightmare, it is her room he runs to. When Vincent struggles to connect with his son, it is she who translates. She has traded the quiet certainty of Dewey Decimals for the messy, dangerous, profound reality of a family forged in crisis. The librarian who broke the rules didn't just save a boy. She found a home in the last place anyone would ever think to look. So, what is the true cost of compassion in a world that often rewards indifference? Catherine Morgan's story forces us to ask that question. She paid with her old life, her safety, her predictable world of quiet order. But in return, she gained something arguably more profound, a purpose that reshaped the destiny of a powerful, broken family. The system designed to protect the vulnerable failed her, and in that failure she discovered a different kind of justice, one forged in loyalty and fierce, protective love. The library, that bastion of public trust and neutral ground, became the unlikely catalyst for a private revolution. Today, the Franklin Public Library has a new, anonymous donor funding its trauma-informed care program and after-hours security. Luca Romano attends a private school where his favorite subject is, unsurprisingly, library. And in a sunlit room in the Berkshires, a woman who once organized books now organizes a life, teaching a boy that stories can have happy endings, even if the path to them is written in shadows. Vincent Romano's empire is more secure than ever, but his most guarded asset is no longer a territory or a bank account. It is the fragile peace he sees in his son's eyes when the boy reads, and the quiet woman who made that peace possible. The lingering question isn't about danger, that will always be there. It's about choice. Faced with the same moment, would you follow the rules or would you follow the human being? Catherine's decision, made in the silent stacks of a closed library, echoes far beyond that one night. It reminds us that sometimes the most extraordinary alliances are born in the most ordinary places, and that a single act of kindness can, against all odds, become the most powerful force in the room. If you found yourself captivated by this tale of unlikely heroes and redeemed darkness, then you won't want to miss what we explore next. We delve into the hidden histories and human dramas that reshape our world from the shadows. For more stories that challenge what you think you know, make sure to subscribe. Your next revelation is just one click away.